All right, welcome to chapters 22 through 25. This is our final segment of Learning to Love. By Learning to Love, Practicing Buddhism in a Time of War by Sangha. So here today with me is Max.
Not to be confused with Shaka Khan.
Shaka Khan. So Max, you've been in and out with some of these chapters with us. And these last few chapters are a really interesting dive into the structure of the villages and the retreats they create as a community.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really fun. Oh goodness! I clicked ahead accidentally. My computer. Okay. So without I highlighted this term expecting maybe another couple people in chat. Because I think you and I often will share a similar approach to Buddhism. That is oftentimes just a little less spiritual. Not that I don't think that you practice any spiritualism with it, but you just seem to approach it more intellectually.
I find that it can be a little ego-aggrandizing to get spiritual with it, because it's really easy to take spirituality seriously.
Right. All right.
Rather than just, sincerely.
Uh-huh.
And, if you come in, wearing that spiritual master face, that can be a little off-putting for people that are like, what is Buddhism?
What is Buddhism? So I would ask you then your response to, without the spiritual element of our work, we may slowly forget the true objective of our service.
I think that's very true. Coming to Buddhism at all.
Yeah.
You don't, if you're really going for it, you don't do it just sort of as a passing fancy, it's it really actually moves you, and you feel that there's something here that can actually help, whether you or others or both or whatever. So you have to keep in mind the goal of Buddhism is to deal with suffering.
Right.
And suffering is a very, very important thing for all of us. So, at the core of this, we're trying to treat each other better. We're trying to treat ourselves better. We're trying to have a good time.
Right.
And to forget that, to get lost in, the woodwork of whatever political, societal, even doctrinal issues that happen to be arising, if it's not based and well-founded in the initial drive for Buddhism, in the alleviation of suffering and the cultivation of wisdom and compassion, then you will get lost, you will forget, and then you're going to start getting caught into this samsaric loop of, oh, okay, I have to do this specific thing and that specific thing, and it becomes more of a business and less of a practice. And when that happens, I mean, you've just become part of the problem.
Right. To drive a little bit of conversation and maybe to talk a little around the chapter rather than about it explicitly, one of these things that I noted in the chapter was that Shan Kong says that she learned that most difficulties could be solved by sitting down and having compassionate, unhurried conversations. I've seen the volunteer staff here at the Sangha Discord kind of appreciate that same methodology when dealing when there's like a little unrest or disagreement. How... I guess I'm asking you, do you agree? How important do you feel like it is to encourage this unhurried conversation style? And I don't know. Extrapolate from there.
I think that's very true. Oftentimes, if there's disagreement, especially one that someone is rather wrapped up in,
Mm-hmm.
you can have this sense of urgency. Because if I don't get you to understand right now, I'll die, or something
Yeah.
like that. So having this sort of panicked, stress-filled conversation rarely works out in anyone understanding what's happening, and often results in people just being upset at each other. So to be able to sit down and establish, look, I'm not trying to argue with you. I'm trying to just talk with you and understand.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, there's no rush. We don't have to figure this out right now, even. But here's a chance for us to do it. So let's take that rather than, yelling at each other or name calling or whatever usual things happen when someone gets upset. The
Right.
problem with this, and it's not necessarily a problem so much as an obstacle, it's exceedingly difficult to just sit down and chill in the middle of a heated argument or whatever,
Right.
because I've been in that position, where I was so certain I was right,
Mm-hmm.
and the other person was just a fool, and I had to tell them about how right I was so that they would know.
I need you to
It's
understand you're wrong.
oh yeah,
Right.
and in hindsight, it's so funny, but if you're caught up in it, it feels just awful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, Especially if the other person's trying to attack you. So if they say, "Hey, hold on, let's sit down, let's chill out, and let's talk about this calmly,"
Mm-hmm.
that provides an out, so to speak, so that you can disengage from the typical ego reaction and take a second, breathe, and actually try and explain yourself rather than having to defend yourself
Yeah.
and attack at the same time. Disengaging that uh, ego fight is a necessary step in any sort of understanding when someone becomes reactive. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, if you've got an issue with someone, invite them to talk about it with you. Don't force them to. Don't tell them that they're wrong and you're right. None of that. Just say, look, I don't get it. Clearly, this is important to you. I want to know why it's so important to you. Help me understand it. Maybe we can come to some sort of mutual agreement.
Right. I love how this echoes a lot of what I think I've seen Sean Kong demonstrate in this book, despite all of the very many obstacles she's presented with during the Vietnam War.
Mm-hmm.
She's constantly having to decide to sit and chill during times of major obstacle and trying to do the good work, of relieving suffering in her communities. And I think she approaches it with that same mindset, right? And I love that.
I mean, I wish more people did. It would really diffuse a lot of unnecessary conflict. But if I can keep going just a little bit,
Sure.
part of the issue, um, I'm going to speak from my own experience. When I was reactive and egoic, if someone were to invite me to chill out and sit down and have a chat, uh, I know that I would feel a inner resistance to that, because somewhere, uh, the ego thinks, no, that's giving up. Sitting down and being quiet means that it's not important anymore. And gosh, it's so important to me. I have to yell, I have to scream, I have to tell everyone. And
Mm-hmm.
it's never that important. The ego has no idea what it's talking about.
It's
But
true.
you believe it nonetheless.
Mm-hmm.
So it's so difficult to be upset and to be invited to sit down and actually do it. So if we tried to take that approach and invite someone, hey, let's chill out and chat about it,
Mm-hmm.
we need to keep in mind that it is rare for someone to say, yeah, all right. You have to allow them the opportunity to say no and to continue to be caught in their cycle, because you can't force other people to relax. All you can do is invite them. So that's a trap that I've gotten caught up in before as well. Invite someone to chat, they say no, and keep being egoic, and then I get egoic because they didn't do what I wanted.
Right.
Uh, just some things to keep in mind with these kinds of approaches, because like when you're dealing with someone else's ego, there's a big risk that yours is going to come up too. So that's a thing to keep in mind. I mean, it's great for practice. It shows you where you still haven't dealt with some inner things of your own. So in that regard, it's very useful.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's also something that you can easily overlook and then get side smacked,
Mm-hmm.
side what's the word, sideswiped
Yeah.
with.
Hmm.
That's my ramble.
Very good. Good ramble.
Thanks.
Um, Chapter 23 is just about them going through the process of acquiring the property here in the United States in order to create another reserve. So they have one overseas called Plum Village, and that's probably their most well known one, but they're creating one over here in, I believe, California called Deer Park
Oh,
during this chapter. Yeah. And Sean Kong notes that this feels very auspicious due to like having the same name where the Buddha gave his first Dharma talk.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of things just really end up coming together and working out every time she takes the time, and the brothers and sisters take the time to really practice hard, I guess. It's really, they approach things with love, compassion, patience, and a sense of, if it's gonna work, it's gonna work. If not, then we'll let it go. You know.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really cool to see them eventually get this land. And yeah, I don't know. It was kind of fun. This chapter was like, oh, this is good. I appreciate these last few chapters only because of how sad every chapter leading up to this ended up being. For the most part, you know what I mean? Just how much pain and suffering and just like all these hard things that kept happening over and over again. To have these last few chapters where it feels like this nice resolution to all this suffering, it's very in a time where I feel particularly overwhelmed with how hard things can be at times. It was very comforting, I guess.
I understand.
So I highlighted this passage thinking of you actually, and a discussion we had a long time ago. So a monk, an ascetic monk, so he looked very much like an ascetic monk, which tells me I don't think he was an ascetic monk, but he was trying to be really hard. Comes to Deer Park. And Thanath Han says to him, "You don't need to practice so hard, not even for the sake of enlightenment. Please join me for a walk and just enjoy practicing being happy wherever you are. Look at these leaves changing form and color, going from yellow to red to brown, and then falling down, dancing all the while, because they know that they've never been born and will never die. That's it. That's life. Accept things as they are. Nothing is more important than being here in joy and in peace. That's enough. We don't need to be enlightened. Don't you agree?"
See, now that's that's very clever. Yeah.
I thought you would
Yeah.
appreciate that.
I mean, we've had conversations before about the very act of seeking enlightenment is what prevents you being enlightened.
Yeah.
Um, and Thea is on that same exact thing here, except he's not saying it explicitly. He's just saying, "Look, chill out. It's already cool." And I mean, that's what happens when you become enlightened. You realize, oh, it's already cool.
It's already cool.
Yeah, I don't need to freak out about all this. It's just here, man. Like, okay, sweet. So, by saying we don't need to be enlightened, you're letting go of seeking enlightenment and can recognize your own enlightenment.
Mm-hmm.
So Thay was very skillfully offering a way of one of those Satori moments.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful.
Yeah. I thought it was really well delivered on his part, for sure.
Yep.
But anyway, I thought you would appreciate that. That's why I particularly wanted to talk about it briefly.
I did appreciate it.
Sean Kong continues to go into some beautiful history and information about the committees and things revolving around both Plum Village and Deer Park. And also some more history, which once again I find myself woefully uninformed about. Like, wow, this all this history happened. Wow.
Well, we are American. What do you expect?
And so it was very interesting. Blah, blah, blah. We got some history. If you are watching this video or whatever in the future, this book's totally worth sitting down and actually digesting and reading.
Right. You could try and pause it at every section and read whatever Des has on the screen, but I don't recommend that.
No, I would recommend going ahead and getting a copy from Kindle or ordering a physical copy if you like to hold your books. If I personally bought a physical copy of every book I've read, I would own way too many books.
Yep, that's how that goes.
So I tend to be very conservative with what books I physically own. So, yeah. Anyway, that's not really particularly useful to this discussion, but now you know.
That's some Des lore.
Some Des lore. Des owns a small collection of books so that she doesn't own too many books. Because that would be sad.
Does that mean our relationship level is increased?
Just like in The Sims.
Yeah.
Now we'll have more options unlocked. Like inside jokes and other things. I'm trying to find some meaty stuff to talk about.
You know, I like to talk about meat.
At one point, a Vietnamese government representative came to visit them at Deer Park, where they they have no private property, right? The Sangha or the village owns it collectively.
Yeah.
And the Vietnamese representative says, "Well, it looks like you have communism here, ha ha ha." And they're like, "Yep, we are the true communists."
Wow. Good.
Reflecting on the word community, not the word communist.
Right.
And I don't know, that was funny to me. All sorts of good stuff. Lots of information about their history and their interactions with non-officially recognized Buddhist groups and their work with them together. And some cool stuff. Lots of history. Here's the last chapter. 25. To be liberated means to realize that nothing can hinder you even while crossing the ocean of birth and death.
So, if you don't... Okay, I feel like that can be a misleading sentence.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't know what they're talking about. So nothing can hinder you. The you is the very important issue here. To be liberated means to be liberated from you. You are the issue. So nothing can hinder you because you aren't there anymore when you're liberated.
Mm-hmm.
Everything flows around you. It's like, or rather maybe you flow around everything. You become like smoke.
Yeah.
You don't touch anything, but you interact, you adapt. So nothing can slow you down. But to not understand that interpretation, I can easily see someone reading that and being like, "Oh, once I'm enlightened, I'm unstoppable."
Yes.
It's like, no,
Buddhist
that's
superpowers activate.
right, right. I don't wanna promote that kind of a thing.
Right. As far as I can tell, this chapter is a major reflection on Shang Kong, like just reflecting on the impermanence of herself,
Ah.
but the opportunity to continue her legacy, I suppose, through her brothers and sisters who take up the mantle of relieving suffering.
Mm-hmm.
And so she starts a lot of these paragraphs with if tonight my like about how if she dies tonight or if tonight my heart ceases to beat, you will see me in all these sisters and brothers. You can see my smile in their look and my voice in their words. And she's just having some like I don't know, like I can imagine how heavy these feelings are, right? I myself in the past have sometimes reflected on my mortality, but hopes that I've left some strain of good in my students.
I don't interpret them as heavy,
Yeah.
but maybe it's me. I see them as rather light and uh, optimistic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Definitely optimistic. I think
Um,
I for me they're heavy only because I still have a lot of work to do when it comes to fully accepting my emotional range.
ah,
And so when I'm presented with emotions outside of, I guess, general contentedness, I'm not really sure how to describe it.
when you are presented with suffering,
Suffering, yeah, it can still be really difficult for me to unwrap my heart from around it.
that's
Um,
fair.
so while I think these are ultimately optimistic and ultimately freeing ideas that she goes through, I know for myself how very much like ripping off a band-aid it would feel, I guess. Like it's freeing in that I'm no longer have this band-aid stuck on me, but it hurts. Like, you know what I mean?
So, I mean, I do know what you mean. First off, the difference for me, um, in the context, like let's say she gets it, right? Let's
Mm-hmm.
say she's actually been liberated. Well, then she knows that there's no difference between her and everyone she's working with. Not
Yep.
not not in that, metaphorical woo woo whatever sense, but like actually
Mm-hmm.
they are doing what she's doing. They have worked with her. They have become part of her. She's
Yes.
always been part of them. Like there's no actual difference. So if she dies, if her body ends, the work continues.
Absolutely.
Her
Yeah.
her whole thing continues. So this is saying that even if you kill me or I die, you cannot kill me and I do not die. I think that's so beautiful, and I don't, you know, this is me getting a read off of the conversation. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
even read the book, but like it's definitely coming across to me like triumph. That was weird emphasis. Like triumph. Uh like like she sees that even with all of the mishaps and obstacles, it's continued. And it's not just her, there's others. And that's why, like, I mean, dying doesn't stop anything.
Right.
What's there to even be upset about? That's my take on it.
I think you've got the right read on everything. I think it helps that you have studied in many other ways, and so ultimately this is just another book in the same vein of everything, right? Especially given that with each page Sean Kong continues to bring a very strongly Buddhist mindset to everything, right? Like very keen to relieve the most suffering in this world she can. And I don't know. I think if you're on the right track theoretically or attempting the right practice, you would have a hard time not generally hitting the tone of the book, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It's not very obscure.
No, she doesn't make it obscure. But that's lovely about it also, is still to have so many things affirmed in their rightness of how to approach things by this woman's story, that once again, I think it's absolutely worth a read. It's I feel like I learned quite a bit from it, just about gracefully approaching suffering and not feeling attached to that suffering as being a part of my identity because it happened. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Hey, that's a good lesson.
Well, because that's like the hardest lesson I've ever had to learn, I think, is that just because this bad thing happened to me and it feels very monumental doesn't mean it is the thing that I am.
Absolutely.
And I think it gets really easy to fall into that mindset. I've met so many people who've suffered so strongly, and that defines them. It is their, I don't know, it somehow becomes their icon of who they are.
Humans have an interesting tendency to associate intensity with truth. And that definitely leads us down some blind alleys sometimes, because as has been said many times in many places, feelings aren't facts. So if you feel very strongly something based on a misunderstanding,
right,
the intensity of your feeling does no way dictate the truth of what you're thinking,
right,
or the rightness of what you're doing. If anything, these intensities can blind us to what's really going on. But no one tells you that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And then there's an afterword, but it's very short, and glossary of terms.
Sweet.
And that's the end of the book.
We did it.
Woo.
Yeah.
Thank you for hanging out with us and going through this book with me. I loved it.
Oh, sure, it's my pleasure. I'm looking forward to the next one already.
Yeah, just because you love Alan Watts.
I do love Alan Watts. I am a fanboy.
Alan Watts fanboy. All right, y'all, I'm going to end the recording here. Have a lovely rest of your week.